when my eldest son was probably about 18 months, I remember him being in the cot and he was just so angry and frustrated about something. And I can't actually remember what it was about at the time. But I remember just kind of looking at him and saying, wow, you're really angry right now. And then I saw this look on his face where he almost kind of paused, went internally, this kind of introspection that Damasio talks about, and then kind of came back out again. It was like these neurons were firing, and he came to this conclusion, oh, this feeling must be anger, or this experience in my body is anger. And so what we're going to be talking about today is raw feelings, and in schema therapy, what we call child modes. My name is Rita. I'm a clinical psychologist and advanced schema therapist supervisor trainer, and welcome to 7-Minute Schemas.
Hi, Rita. Yes, I'm Ruth, and I'm also a clinical psychologist and advanced schema therapist supervisor trainer. Child modes are a really interesting part of schema therapy, and I think it's worth just saying off the bat that when we are all little people, we do have feelings. We're born with the capacity to express anger, sadness, excitement. And even though some cultures, some families want to kind of not have feelings, they are just what they are. They're like the weather, they're like colors. They're not necessarily bad or good things. And in fact, often we even want to think about what were the messages I were given growing up about certain feelings or about any feelings. But when, ideally, like in that example you gave us, when there's a caregiving environment where there's attunement, where there's validation, understanding, safety, little people have big feelings, and the adults come alongside and help them, name them, soothe them, and that is the seed of self-regulation.
Yeah. And even before all of those steps is just kind of understanding all of these kind of mixture of sensations that are going on in my body. What do they actually mean? And if we come from an early caregiving environment where that level of attunement and guidance in terms of understanding what it is that we're feeling and when we're feeling it, we're going to find it really hard to make sense of that and then work out from that, what is it that we need in that moment? And when we talk about child modes, we go back to needs, which is what schema therapy is all about.
Yeah, so when we're thinking about child modes, we're thinking about a range of different feeling states. A child mode is the part of us that holds often the pain of unmet needs. So if we're thinking about a vulnerable child mode, it can often feel sad or lonely or afraid or helpless or overwhelmed. It's got a lot of feelings. It's got a lot of body sensations too that are connected to it, and memories. Also angry or enraged child, right? So a side of us that's really protesting about an unmet need in an angry way, maybe a bit out of control, maybe like a tantrum in a sort of out of control way. Also impulsive and undisciplined child modes, Rita.
Yeah, so these again are child modes that are either underregulated or overregulated in terms of our early caregiving environment. But if we go back to that example with my 18-month-old kind of getting angry, perhaps an impulsive child would have been to grab something and maybe throw it at me or at somebody. So that's kind of what impulsiveness is this kind of inability to sometimes delay gratification or set limits on certain kind of impulses and urges in the moment. And again, the early caregiving environment helps us do that. When it comes to an undisciplined child mode, this is really about tolerating the frustration and boredom of something to get it done. In my household, it's constant things like, you got to pick up your toys, you got to help with this, you got to help with that. And, what usually comes out is that is boring. And, as you and I know, Ruth, how many things do we have to do in life as a healthy adult, if you like, that is boring. And that's part of this kind of internal locus of control, of discipline for aspects of the self to kind of, get things done that are important to us.
Yeah, so we've got a bunch of different child modes, haven't we? Another one is an obstinate child mode. So it's maybe a side of us that is sort of like an inner donkey that reacts, to the word no, I just don't want to do it. It's a kind of resisting, but it's like in a childlike state, just no because. I don't even really have a reason. I just say no to things. So it could be that. Or the kind of child mode that we'd love to have more of for people is a happy child mode. So when our needs are met, when we're able to be in a state of joy or play or spontaneity or calm, that's a kind of mode that we often want to grow in clients, because perhaps if they're living with chronic depression, chronic problems with family or friends, they're surviving often. And so there's not a lot of happy child either in their childhood or even in their current situation.
And we'll talk more about all of these specific child modes in a little bit more detail in other episodes of 7-minute schemas. But I think it's important to just kind of take a moment and to note that we all have these parts of self. We all have these child modes, and it's not about regulating them perfectly. You know, we're all going to have a bit of an adult tantrum sometimes and just kind of behave like an angry kid. You know, when I get a parking fine, for example, you can see me stomping my feet and getting really kind of, you know, shirty about that. It's more about kind of how often we might connect with these child parts of self where there's lots of emotion, and then we find it really, really difficult to regulate that. And as a result of that, we have a lot of the symptoms and problems that sometimes kind of lead us to have mental health issues and seek support.
So just like you said, there can be situations or presentations where people have big child modes. They feel overwhelmed by that particular side of them, but there can also be suppressed child modes. So perhaps real challenges, accessing vulnerability. I never feel safe. I'm in the therapy room, but I cannot share that distress, or I've learned to shut it down, or my body just shuts it down. So there can be a lot of work we're doing in that therapy frame, trying to access the child modes that might be hidden or suppressed. Well, that's our 7 minutes, Rita. We look forward to sharing a bit more in detail about the child modes coming up. And if clinicians are interested in training, there'll be some links at the bottom below this.